They say he's a fascist. Joining me right now for reaction, the man that was attacked himself, Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk, along with someone who has become all too familiar, unfortunately, with this brand of hate, Fox Nation host Tommy Lahren. Welcome to you both. Charlie,
thank you.
What do you have to say about that? I mean, people calling you a fascist. You want to educate them a little bit on what fascism really is?
Yeah, no kidding. Well, little do they know that we actually, when we do our campus events at Turning Point USA, if anyone disagrees, they're allowed to come to the front of the line and ask any question they want to whatsoever. But Trish, what I found to be most disheartening is that instead of actually coming in to have a conversation, they were screaming outside because it made them feel good, not because it actually did good. And I mean, this was kind of virtue signaling in real time. And unfortunately, the university administration or college professors, they weren't out actually encouraging the students to have dialogue or meaningful conversation. And Trish, what's so amazing is they couldn't even say one thing that I believe. Instead, it's just innuendo, it's open-ended insults, and it's things that are completely fake and false. And it's too bad because when you don't talk to people, then really bad things unfortunately start to happen.
I agree. They didn't do their research. They had no idea who you are, really what you stood for. All they knew is that you support the president, and therefore, in their view, must be a really bad person.
All right, guys, so we got to continue our coverage of the reactions to Charlie Kirk's assassination by Democrats, liberals, leftists, progressives, people on the left side of the aisle. In this video, we got to focus on Democrats and their response because they are in leadership, right? And they should be coming out here and denouncing all of the rhetoric that we know led to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We know that the shooter was radicalized. We know that he was radicalized with far left Antifa ideology. This is the type of ideology that Democrats sympathize with, they flirt with, and their supporters just outright agree with, right? They endorse, they believe this, right? This is their thing, okay? But again, it's almost as if Democrats just refuse to acknowledge reality, which is something that should surprise nobody because they haven't acknowledged reality for, at the very least, the last 4 to 8 years, right? Since Trump has been a mainstream figure in politics, Democrats have distanced themselves from reality more and more and more, okay? I mean, they're at the point where they're just downright delusional, okay, in regards to the current state of our politics and the role that their rhetoric has played in political violence, okay? Political violence, way too much political violence that we've seen over the past decade in this country. And unfortunately, the assassination of Charlie Kirk is a result of that rhetoric, specifically the rhetoric of calling Charlie Kirk a fascist, which is what Tyler Robinson, okay, believed, the assassin believed that Charlie Kirk was a fascist, right? And that is part of the motivation for why the assassin decided to kill Charlie Kirk, okay? This is an undisputable fact, okay? But according to Democrats, their rhetoric, okay, and them calling Charlie Kirk and people like him and Trump fascists, Nazis, Hitler, apparently that has nothing to do with what happened. And even some Democrats are going as far as to essentially blame Trump.
And it's reacting in downright horrific ways to Charlie Kirk's assassination by blaming Charlie Kirk and the conservative movement for his own murder. Just listen to Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar.
Charlie was someone who once said, guns save lives after a school shooting. Charlie was someone who was willing to debate and downplay the death of George Floyd, downplay slavery and what Black people have gone through in this country. There are a lot of people who are out there talking about him just wanting to have a civil debate.
Complete rewriting of history.
Cruel indeed. Nauseating. And Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren shrugged off a question about the Democrats' rhetoric.
What do you say to people who are saying the Democrats need to lower their temperatures?
Oh, please. Right. Why don't you start with the President of the United States, right? And every ugly meme he has posted and every ugly word.
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker went as far as to blame President Trump for Charlie Kirk's murder.
I think there are people who are fomenting it in this country. I think the president's rhetoric often foments it. We've seen the January 6th rioters who clearly, have tripped a new era of political violence.
Fomenting indeed. CBS Mornings host Nate Burleson wasted no time pointing the finger at Republicans.
Not everyone took to his words or his rhetoric. You know, at times they were offensive to specific communities. But with that said, this is not the time to focus on that. We are focused on this tragedy.
And earlier this week, MSNBC fired analyst Matthew Dowd, who grossly smeared Kirk on air after the shooting.
He's been one of the most divisive, especially divisive younger figures in this, who is constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech. Hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful actions.
We've got to talk about like what it means when you're running for president or you're running for one of these higher offices and you go out there and you talk about beating people up. You go out there and you say things like, I could shoot somebody in the middle of the street in New York and I could still win. We got to talk about like that is next level. Mm-hmm. Me disagreeing with you, me calling you, you know, I want to be Hitler. All those things are like not necessarily saying go out and hurt somebody. But when you're literally telling people at rallies, yeah, beat them up and that kind of stuff, like you are promoting like a culture of violence. So we need to talk about like what it looks like when you don't promote a culture of violence.
People don't have any intention of saying something that's going to lead to something dangerous, but we cannot take responsibility for the minds that are out there and how they hear it.
Wow. 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 Again, I'm sick to my stomach. I am sick to my stomach. So, none of these Democrats, none of them, said the right thing. The right thing is, hey, guys, this guy was clearly inspired by our rhetoric, the things that we say, and we need to tone it down. We need to take the lead and tone the temperature down. Regardless of how we feel about Trump, we need to turn the temperature down on our side. That would be the right thing to say. To take some personal responsibility and accountability for what clearly was a shooting motivated by Democrat rhetoric. The same rhetoric that they've been using for years. Calling people who disagree with them fascist.
Let me ask you tonight, do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do.
This is what kicking the shit out of fascism looks like.
Try to prevent the spread of the lawlessness and the fascist chaos that's been unleashed against us.
So when we say Donald Trump is a fascist, fascism, a huge component of fascism is uniting racism, bigotry, a form of racist nationalism.
We are now living in a fascist dictatorship.
Mm-hmm. We are worried about potential rise of fascism in this country. We're worried about our democracy falling to an authoritarian and potentially fascist form of government.
Not only to roll over to Donald Trump's will, but to roll over our democracy and allow him to take over this country as a fascist dictator.
When fascism isn't just coming, it's already here.
The former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, said, "No one has ever been more dangerous to this country than Donald Trump, and he is a fascist to his core."
Yeah. So, according to the ghetto congresswoman, Trump is inciting violence, even though we have not seen any prominent Democrat figures, okay? Not on the same level as President Trump, who was almost assassinated twice. Probably more than that. Again, twice as far as we know. Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated. You had an assassination attempt on a conservative Supreme Court justice during the Roe v. Wade riots. We also had attempted assassinations on Republicans who actually got shot, right? According to Jasmine Crockett, apparently all of the political violence in this country is mainly one side. It comes from white supremacists, and her comparing President Trump to Hitler, which again is just an insane comparison, right? I mean, Trump and Hitler not even close, but then again, I've seen leftists and maniacs online comparing Charlie Kirk to Hitler, basically saying, well, Hitler had a family too. That doesn't mean anything, right? Again, as a way to rationalize and to justify the assassination of Charlie Kirk, they've essentially compared Charlie Kirk to some of the worst human beings to ever live, even though Charlie Kirk was nonviolent. He preached nonviolence. He was a devout Christian. And again, he lived peacefully, right? A peaceful life and promoted peace. He never murdered anybody. He never killed anybody. He's never committed a crime. Again, they're comparing him to Hitler, right? In order to justify the assassination, to rationalize the assassination, right? But again, they don't think that that contributed to what happened here when the killer, the assassin, wrote on the bullet casings about anti-fascism. Clearly, Charlie Kirk was targeted because you have people in this country that think that him and people like him are fascist. But again, according to Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, well, we take no responsibility. We can't control how people think about the stuff we say. We can't control how people react when we call Trump Hitler, right? When we unjustifiably compare Trump to Hitler and compare people like Charlie Kirk to the worst human beings on earth, when we compare Trump supporters to Nazis, we can't control how people react to that. It's not our fault. It's not our fault that we made people think that way. To think that President Trump and people like Charlie Kirk are the worst people on the planet. We don't have any control over that. So again, when they're not blaming Trump, blaming Charlie Kirk himself for his own assassination, they're essentially saying, well, you can't really hold us accountable for radicalizing these people, right? But you can't hold us accountable for our reckless rhetoric. But at the same time, they want Trump to be held accountable for reckless rhetoric that has not led to the same type of assassination attempts that we've seen on Trump himself, conservatives, and Republicans. This is the current state of politics in this country. That is how disconnected Democrats are from reality. And it gets worse because apparently Democrats, while at the same time making the argument that what happened to Charlie Kirk is a result of his speech, right? The things that he said, okay? They're also now upset and mad because leftists, people are being fired because of things that they said about Charlie Kirk. They celebrated Charlie Kirk's death, so they got fired for it. And now all of a sudden, people like Jasmine Crockett are upset by this because, again, the real problem is white supremacy. Like that's the actual problem in this country. Okay?
But I literally have never said anything to invoke violence. And I challenge somebody to go and find a clip of a Democrat invoking violence. Right now, everybody's gotten so sensitive. I woke up and a friend sent me a text message where somebody else had been fired for repeating Charlie Kirk's words, right? Like they're firing people and they're canceling people because people have gone out and looked at some of the things that he said. I'm gonna be honest. I never said a word about Charlie Kirk. Like he wasn't on my radar. Like I don't go and follow the right wing special people. Like I don't. Like it's just not, I got other things to do. And some of my friends who had never heard of him were like, let's dig, let's figure who is he, right? Because people are like, this is coming up on our feed and we don't know what's going on. We don't know who it is. And literally, I didn't know he had ever talked about me. And I guess it was recently, but like I had never seen it. I had never paid attention to it. But I was like, so we're not going to talk about white supremacy? Like, we're not going to talk about the fact that the vast majority of these shootings, whether they are seen as political or not, if we look at the numbers, white supremacy ideology. But we don't want to do anything about that. There's no legislation that they want to bring. Every time you say white supremacy, they want to yell, oh, you're race baiting. No, I am going on facts. Like these crimes, when we look at these mass shootings, most of them are linked to neo-Nazism or, you know, Proud Boys or whatever. It's always some white supremacy kind of thing that's going on. It's not black folk that are going out there. It's not immigrants that are going out there. But what cities are we going into? Black cities, because we are supposedly the ones that commit all the crime. Which people are we going after? Immigrants, because allegedly it's immigrants, but we don't want to have a talk about what the numbers say, what the facts say, which is that we have a white supremacy problem in this country. So until we decide to deal with the problem.
Again, wow. this is where we're at. This is where we're at. Like, I mean, it's almost as if we're living in two completely different realities, right? Apparently, again, the appropriate response to all of this, right, in this moment from Jasmine Crockett is, well, white supremacy is the problem. White supremacy is the problem. Now, again, you know, it's just fascinating to me because instead of just owning it, right, just telling the truth, is all these deflections, is all these, oh, well, what happened to the Democrats a few months ago? Who celebrated? What conservative celebrated that? No conservative celebrated what happened to those Democrats. It is not clear that the dude who assassinated the Minnesota Democrat and shot others, right? It's not clear that that individual was a Trump supporter. He may have been conservative. He may not have been conservative. He claims that Tim Walz motivated him to do it, right? That's what he says. I don't know. I think it's unclear. And I can say that honestly, I don't know about this guy, right? We don't have any real clear evidence of what his ideology or what his motives were for that shooting, okay? Outside of him saying, well, Tim Walz made me do it. You might not believe that, but that's what he said. We don't have bullet encasings that clearly show what his political ideology is, right? We don't have that. They say, well, conservatives made fun of Paul Pelosi. Again, the guy who attacked Paul Pelosi was not a Trump supporter. There's no evidence that he was a Trump supporter, despite the conspiracies from the left. Also, on top of that, Paul Pelosi didn't die. He didn't die. Okay, it's one thing if he died, but he didn't die. Everybody agrees what happened to him was terrible. But no matter how these people try to spin the conversation, it is an undisputed fact that we do not have a conservative version of BLM where we had dozens of people die, billions of dollars in property damage. We do not have a conservative version of the Roe v. Wade riots, right? Have you guys seen any pro-life riots? Have you seen any of that? No, we haven't seen that, right? We haven't seen that. During the Roe v. Wade riots, we almost saw an assassination of a Supreme Court justice. There was an assassination attempt. We do not have a conservative version of the pro-Palestine riots. We do not have a conservative version of the No Kings riots. We do not have a conservative version of Antifa. These are all left-wing groups that have been responsible for billions of dollars of property damage, of political violence, chaos, destruction, and lives in cities across the country. And we have not seen assassination attempts on prominent level Democrats and liberals, not the same way we've seen against conservatives and Republicans. It's not even close. But yet these people will continue to point to everything and everybody else, right? It's almost as if these people are allergic to accountability. They're allergic to the truth. Because the truth hurts, right? So, again, you got people getting fired. Jasmine Crockett apparently has an issue with that, right? She has an issue with people getting fired for celebrating Charlie Kirk's death or making insensitive comments about Charlie Kirk's death. Now, keep in mind, these are the same people who are using his words to justify him being assassinated. Now, all of a sudden, words are not justification for a firing, okay? Hurtful words, because these words do hurt people's feelings. Okay, these people celebrating Charlie Kirk's death. Apparently, Charlie Kirk hurting people's feelings in their minds, in some people's minds, was justification for what happened to him. But, oh, no. Don't let a liberal hurt somebody's feelings and get fired from a job. Oh, no, that's too far. That's too far. Freedom of speech. Freedom of speech. Freedom of speech. Fascinating. Fascinating how they're making a freedom of speech argument for why is it liberals shouldn't be fired. They shouldn't lose their jobs for saying insensitive things, hurtful things, hateful things about Charlie Kirk in response to him being assassinated. They shouldn't lose their jobs for that. But these are the same people trying to use Charlie Kirk's words as justification for what happened to him in order to rationalize it. Because in their minds, you can't be fired for words. But hey, if you are a conservative and you speak out, you speak your opinions, and you get assassinated because of your words, then, hey, words got consequences, right? That is what they're saying. This is how they think. This is how they think. And it's to me, it just really blows my mind because, again, you think you've seen everything, but you haven't. And you just realize how divided of a country that we live in. If something like that was to happen to the left-wing version of Charlie Kirk, I don't know who that is, okay? The last thing that I would ever do is to get on camera and try to rationalize it. The last thing I would ever do is get on camera and try to justify it. The last thing that I will ever do is to get on camera and celebrate it. Because I have a soul and I understand as a human being that that's somebody's mother, father, sister, brother, relative, grandma, aunt, uncle, whatever. Whatever. And if the assassin or the killer is clearly and obviously right-wing, right, was a Trump supporter, and I'm talking about like undisputable, right? Like in this situation right here, this guy that assassinated Charlie Kirk undisputably was a leftist. If it was somebody that was far right or whatever, and it was undisputable, then I would come out and say, hey, this is wrong. That this happened because of right-wing extremism. I have no issues acknowledging that when it actually happens. And there's actual real evidence for it. Not these theories from Democrats about how some guy who has a BLM flag outside of his house somehow is some flaming Trump supporter, right? If there was actually real evidence and proof that, okay, this guy was influenced by right-wing ideology and it happened because of rhetoric, we have direct evidence that, hey, this happened because of the rhetoric from Trump or from Republicans, I would condemn it. I condemn it. I don't understand, why is that so hard for Democrats to do? Why is it so hard for liberals and progressives to do? These people, we want Trump to tone it down. But you're not willing to acknowledge that your party has a problem? Because again, we're not seeing the same level of violence towards liberals and Democrats that we're seeing towards conservatives. It's not the same thing. We're not seeing, it's not the same. We're not seeing the same level. But, oh, Trump needs to tone it down. Oh, the problem is white supremacy. Again, it's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.